Actually, there are a couple of questions regarding your presentation. Thank you again for your very interesting presentation. Here, there's a list of them. Do you want to take them in order, or in that same order, or do you want to have a specific order?
No, you just go ahead. Let's take one.
Okay. Yes, the first one is there are a number of indices and labels defined in EU countries rating construction products in terms of emissions or giving thresholds. To what extent these are useful in the quest to IAQ metrics?
Well, I believe that this is answered in my last bullet point, because I believe that we do not have sufficient evidence on their performance. So we need to, they may be useful, and we cannot, reject them at the start and start developing something new. So there is a certain reason why they were developed. We need to go and see through this, and then look at their performance. And I will not reject them. Maybe they could be useful for developing an IAQ metric for the future. So this is my answer to that question.
I guess maybe to follow up on this, maybe they could be useful to define minimum requirements to some extent, and then be complemented with other IAQ metrics in order to...
so there is a certain purpose why they were developed. So some labels were developed to, indices were developed to reduce the emissions of certain pollutants from building materials. Some were developed for other purposes. So that, or maybe some of them were developed for the purpose of design. Some of them were developed maybe for the purpose of the operation and maintenance check. So really, I'm not sure. Maybe there may be only one single index that can serve all the purposes, but there could be different indices that serve different purposes. So I have no answer to that. I may have some thinking towards this, but I believe that these are the questions that will be addressed very carefully during the workshop in March in Brussels.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to the next question. In your view, which metrics would be better than ventilation airflow rates or CO2 levels? I guess, yes, it's a difficult question also.
So, okay, I do not want to dismiss CO2 at that moment. I just want to draw attention of the audience to the problems related with CO2, of course. But one of the biggest problems of CO2 is that if we regulate CO2 or if we regulate any pollutant, then if we start to develop the air cleaning systems that remove those pollutants and document that these pollutants are at the mandatory levels, then do we do anything about other pollutants? No. So there will be other pollutants that may create also risk. So it is slightly dangerous to use a CO2 for the purpose of as an IAQ metric. Maybe it's a good metric for the ventilation efficiency, but probably not as the IAQ metric. I mean, to answer this question, it's really going back also to my slides. I think it cannot be dealt. We cannot even deal with this if I say now, okay, the index that's integrating the pollutants, some pollutants, is better than the ventilation, because it may also have some, and may also fail on with some respect. So therefore, we have to be aware of the limitations of using a ventilation as the unique, metric, or CO2 as a unique metric. And this is the purpose of my talk today, rather than to give an answer what metric should be used. in the future. Also, there is a danger that if we start to measure something that is undocumented, because I know that we are overwhelmed, and the market is overwhelmed by numerous sensors now, that they can measure everything nearly. The question is, we really don't know what they measure, A, and B, we really don't know whether this is relevant, what they measure, for humans.
Yes, I guess that the next question is a bit related to what you mentioned also at the end of your presentation.
So DALI, I would use DALI to define the pollutants that are of importance. For those who really would like to look at this, I really advertise, a work that was done by Lawrence Berkeley Labs, Jennifer Locke, Max Sherman's group, that is also represented in the Tech Note 68 of AIVC, in which they tried to look at it's similarly to what Ten Brinke made with the volatile organic compounds, defining the metric for volatile organic compounds. It's trying to say, okay, with the current evidence, can we define the compounds that really matter? And then they come up using a DALI method. They come up with a handful of, it's like 5 or 6 compounds that are important. I believe that this is a right step to go for the future, is to basically look, we know for certain that those pollutants are important. So let's regulate them. Let's make sure that the exposure levels to those pollutants are minimized, and then see whether it helps. If it doesn't help, then we can start to measure other pollutants and identify what is it that is contributing further. Because they will always create a noise or a sort of a noise, in the measurement. So those other pollutants that we know that will create. And also they may sort of like overshadow the impact of other pollutants that are also important.
Okay, and then we have a last question regarding ventilation system performance, because in fact, one of the reasons why we're interested in IAQ metrics is to be able to compare ventilation system performance. And so the question is, which phenomena, problems, good metrics should account for to be useful to compare ventilation system performance?
Okay. First of all, I would like to say that if there are humans in the building, CO2 would be an excellent, metric for the ventilation system performance. For that particular purpose, I believe it's going to be marvelous. But then we need to think about the response time and then sensitivity. I believe that these are the very important 2 elements here. Is how quickly it responds, and especially if we think about demand control ventilation, and if we think about the VAV systems, here we really need to look at the aspect of the how quickly it responds, and so the time of response, and also which level will create change in which level will create a response.
Yes, but actually to follow up with this, I think that maybe it goes a little bit further than that also. As you mentioned in your presentation, we have more and more problems with the outdoor air also, and to compare also ventilation system performance, for instance, to compare the ventilation system which will be able to filter the air, the outside air, with another one, and maybe we need to have more integral metrics or a set of metrics which would be better to characterize the performance or the quality of the indoor air in the long term, I would say.
I agree with you on that point. Actually, it's a very important point, but I basically by default assumed that the system will provide a level of protection against outdoor pollution. Mm-hmm. So, but of course, and I was more thinking about the ventilation rate delivery here. If the performance is also defined by the quality of the air that is delivered by the system, the ambient air quality is an important issue here, and So this phenomenon has to be this has to be included when we define the system performance, ventilation system performance.
Well, thank you very much. Maybe we have additional questions.
We have more questions from the audience, so I have put them down on another PowerPoint, so I will get...
Okay, maybe you can take
just hold on. So I'll share my screen and show you. So, Pawel, can you see my screen?
Sure.
Okay, so do you want me to read to you these questions, or we can start with question 1? So when Pettenkofer did his observations, he concluded that ideally he would like to measure particles, but that was not possible. Instead, he chose to record CO2. It is not time to focus more on the particulate load indoors. Is it not time?
No, it is. I believe it is. This is something that we are missing. Mind that in all my presentation, I didn't talk about the particles very much for the indices that were developed in the past. So with all the evidence that is coming from WHO, that we need to consider that, and all the new evidence of the potential of the small size particles and their effects on humans. So we need to focus on the particle load indoors, and I believe the future IAQ index need to consider the measurements of particles. For the PM2.5 and PM10, we have the levels defined by the WHO from the point of the chronic exposure and also somewhat acute for the shorter term. But we don't have any information about the smaller size particles. This is something that will be a limiting a factor here, because it is not only that we recommend that we measure this, but what should be the level? I mean, we also have to teach the sensor or the metric to say, I mean, when it should react at which level.
Okay, the second bullet is more like a comment. So,
comment.
Yes, so they say that in Finland they often measure air pressure differences between building envelope and indoor air. So it gives a lot of good information about the actual working hours and air tightness of the building. I don't know if you want to comment something on that. But we can go to the third question, which is, what about interaction of other pollutants, e.g. amount of dust in the breathing zone, which may increase the exposure, or dry air, which harms our barrier against pollutants in throat, nose, and eyes?
Well, I applaud this question, but I don't have any answer, I'm sorry. Certainly, one of the issues is that our standards currently are developed in this way, that we look at one modality or one factor at a time. We separately talk about temperature, we separately talk about ventilation, we separately talk about any other potential influencing factors. So the only approach for the future would be to basically integrate this and appreciate that there is interaction between the pollutants, and more research should be focused on this aspect in the future. We have also very limited evidence on how they affect what was the interaction.
Okay, Pawel, let's move a bit quickly to the rest of the questions because we are far behind schedule. DALI doesn't allow yet to quantify radon and mold health impact due to lack of data. Do you have any idea on how to deal with this?
I don't know. So just to give a quick answer, and for mold, even WHO doesn't know what to do, and there are many groups that are working to create a sort of a index for mold. I mean, it's very difficult to. I mean, how we measure that? When is the risk? So that is something that is, I'm not sure about the radon. Probably there is information about radon. but we would have to ask the specialist on that.
Okay.
I would recommend the person asking to connect with the groups in Finland, Otto Haninen, and or in a group in California, Max Sherman and his colleagues.
Okay, perfect. And this is the last question is it possible to regulate room ventilation automatically by continuous CO2 measurement? And if yes, why it is not broadly applied?
I think it is possible when there are people in a space. I don't know why it is not broadly applied, but there are issues with the CO2 sensors and that are used for controlling ventilation. I don't want to even start the debate at this moment on that particular. But certainly CO2 can be used for the ventilation efficiency. As I said, it's a good indicator.